Assalamu alaikum, dear students. I hope you are having a very good day today. Today's topic is Introduction to Canadian Literature. Dear students, today we are going to explore Canadian literature, a rich and diverse field shaped by the country's history, geography, and multicultural identity. Before going into detail, I would like to tell you something that Canada was the part of Commonwealth of Nations, and Commonwealth first applied to England during the Civil War period when Puritans ruled England and they called England the Commonwealth. Now, in today's contemporary time periods, Commonwealth refers to intergovernmental body of erstwhile colonies. Approximately there are 56 members in this group. Earlier time periods we have Commonwealth literature that keep us there with colonial past. And when we move one step further from 16th to 17th century, then we have a kind of mature writings. So dear students, first of all, let me tell you about the origin of Canadian literature. First, we have indigenous oral traditions. Now, many of you, they are very much familiar with the term indigenous oral traditions. Long before European settlers arrived, indigenous people had complex oral literature. These included myths, legends, spiritual stories, and teachings. These narratives reflect deep relationships with nature, land, and ancestors. Then we have colonial beginnings. The first written literature came with French and British colonizers. For example, we had French Jewish missionaries that documented their experiences in works like Jesuit relationships or Jews relations. Dear students, English settlers, we call them the white men, they wrote diaries, letters, and travelogues. For example, we have Roughing It in the Bush by Susanna Moodie. She portrays the struggles of settlers' life. Because we all know that Canada is having a harsh weather pattern, a harsh climate is there. A normal person like you and me, we cannot survive the cold there in Canada. Then in 19th century we have development of a national literature. Writers began exploring Canadian landscapes and identities. Literature reflected survival in harsh environments and loyalty to the British Crown and frontier life. When we talk about the 20th century, then we cannot forget the World War I and World War II. So in 20th century, World War I and World War II literature saw a rise in self-conscious Canadian identity. Writers began questioning colonial influence and sought a unique literary voice. Institutions like the Canada Council for the Arts supported homegrown writers. Then we are moving towards the contemporary period. multiculturalism became a major theme. We have indigenous, immigrant, and LGBTQ voices gained recognition, and Canadian literature became global with authors winning prestigious awards like the Booker Prize and Nobel Prize. Dear students, without talking about the major themes, I believe things can be difficult for you to understand. So the first theme that I come across, that is the nature and wilderness. We all know that Canada's vast and often hostile environment plays a central role on the psyche of the people there. The theme of survival in nature appears frequently. Then we have identity and nationalism, the second theme. The exploration of what it means to be Canadian, balancing British, American, French, and indigenous influences. Then we have different cultures and immigration today. Canada's diversity is a major subject. Many novels explore the immigrant experience and cultural integration. Yes, students, we have indigenous identity and reconciliation. For example, earlier writers used literature to reclaim history and culture, and they include the themes like colonial trauma, healing, and land rights. Moreover, we have feminism and gender. Strong female voices have shaped Canadian literature. Issues of gender, patriarchy, and women's roles are explored in so many novels and poems of Canadian literature. Now let's talk on the prominent Canadian writers. We have Margaret Atwood. She is feminist writer having feminist themes, dystopia, and Canadian identity. Her famous work is For the Handmaid's Tale and Surfacing. Likewise, we have Alice Munro. She is known for short stories about small town life and relationship. And most importantly, she is the winner of Nobel Prize in 2013 in literature. Then we have Thomas King, indigenous writer blending oral storytelling with fiction. Works include Green Grass, Running Water. Furthermore, dear students, we have Canadian literature in French as well that is not applicable for us to study. I am talking about or from the perspective of those students who are the part of English BS program. So they are not supposed to study Canadian French literature but rather Canadian English literature. Now, dear students, Canadian literature is more than just stories. It is a reflection of a nation's struggles, diversity, and evolving identity. From indigenous wisdom to immigrant narratives, and from feminist voices to environmental concerns, Canadian literature continues to grow and redefine itself in a global context. Now, lastly, I am going to suggest you a few readings of Canadian literature. You can read Susanna Moodie, Roughing It in the Bush. You can study Margaret Atwood, The Handmaid's Tale. You can read the Alice Munro story, The Dance of the Happy Shades. And last, Thomas King's Green Grass, Running Water. So, dear students, this is how the Canadian literature today we have, that it started from oral traditions, and then we have so many writers, so many poems, so many novels that are very much famous today. So lastly but not the least, one more idea that I want to add here, that most of the Canadian literature, they are known today as the environmentalist. Why environmentalist? Because of the Canada's harsh weather pattern. And if you again want to read something important, then you can read True Solitude. You can read The Watch that ends the night. They are against the backdrop of wars. So, war, a major theme in Canadian literature. So, I end my lecture today on this point that Canadian literature is very famous, and we can say that nature is a part of Canadian literature. We cannot keep ourselves away from the rustic life, from the regional writing, and from the local color realism. Thank you so much.